Backyard Brawl lived up to its name. It was a 12-round fight. Now Pitt must do what it could not last year. Follow up a big, emotional win with another winning performance. Can they rise to the occasion again in back-to-back weeks against the Tennessee Volunteers? We discuss that and more on this week's Hail to Pitt podcast.
What was your message about finishing it in these final 30 minutes?
Well, it happened in West Virginia where we knocked off number 2. It happened in South Carolina, and it's happening in Pittsburgh today. Our guys had a lot of guts tonight. We're just going to keep getting better. I mean, that's what it is.
One hell of a game that you will never, ever forget. We shocked the world!
Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt. This is the week of September 10th, 2022, and this is the Hail to Pitt podcast. I'm Alan.
And I'm Vince.
Never a doubt in my mind, Pitt won the Backyard Brawl, sent WVU packing back to the inferior Big 12, and now it is time to lick our wounds from such a vicious scrap and focus on the Vols. Here we are, Vince, in the midst of a season we knew would be full of obstacles, rough outings, but still big wins. And Pitt started off with just that. A big old win with a huge moment for the new Tommy Duhart. I don't think anyone's going to try to be Tommy Duhart now. They want to be MJ Turkey Devonshire.
Yeah. A huge win against one of your biggest rivals, a battle of unbeaten teams on national television, and win in that fashion. It was really something to see, Alan. If you watch the post-game press conference from MJ Devonshire, he was talking about how, he was watching tapes of old Backyard Brawls, and he wanted to be just like Darrelle Revis, with a big return touchdown, and he was mad that he wasn't the punt returner, so he said, I'm going to have to get the ball some other way and make a big play, and that's exactly what he did, leading the Panthers to a huge 38-31 victory to kick off the season.
I mean, what a moment, what a game full of big plays, amazing outing from the hot rod, Rodney Hammond, who's nursing an injury now after that. The Brawl, you knew you'd have some injuries, some wounds, Vince, so looking forward to hearing what the latest is, if there's anything from Narduzzi. But Pat stuck to his guns on defense, and while they gave up some big gashes in the run game, they ended up pulling out the victory with a huge defensive play. Man, there's a lot to break down from that game. But of course, the Tennessee Volunteers now coming to town. What's the percentage rumor on amount of Vols fans at a Creature Stadium?
I haven't heard ESPN's latest projections, but until we hear otherwise, I think we have to assume it's 75%.
75% full of Vols fans. Again, just like last week, I guess, but I think Pitt could do it. We're going to have to break it all down here for you, but let's get cracking and Carney bark at you. We are at H2P Show on Twitter if you want to reach us there. And, of course, email hail2pittpodcast@gmail.com. Hail the number 2. pitpodcast@gmail.com. We appreciate all the love we get on those platforms. The emails are great. We love the tweets, but of course we also appreciate you Panther Lair maniacs all going crazy for the first game, and of course for this show. We're seeing some love for the show lately, Vince, which is always a good feeling.
Yep. We appreciate all the feedback, all the love we're getting, and just ready to keep hyping this thing up even more as the Panthers continue on this huge season.
It's amazing how people like the show so much when Pitt's winning. Let's keep it up, baby. And of course, no matter what happens, win, lose, or draw, we are brought to you by Pretty Easy Podcasts. You can start your own podcast right now. All you have to do is go to prettyeasypodcast.com, go inquire, and say, hey, I got a podcast idea. I need to do a show. Or even if you are already doing a show and you need the production help at an affordable rate, go to prettyeasypodcast.com. Get sounding like a professional podcast. Get all the help you would need so you could focus on the show and not all the other BS like Apple Podcast uploads and going into your dashboard and finding your numbers. They do it all for you. And it's so easy to get started. It really is just a visit to prettyeasypodcast.com and saying, what up? And they'll help you out.
And they make podcasting pretty easy.
Now, Some people would say that the WVU victory wasn't an easy one for Pitt, but really, when you break it down and watch the game 2 or 3 times, it was easy for Pitt to face WVU. The hard opponent on Saturday, Vince, was the Pitt Panthers for themselves, getting over their own nerves, whatever they were for the first game, for their first brawl. It was there, it was present, and it was a mental game for the Pitt Panthers that in the end they overcame, but it was a close cigar in that regard.
Yeah, a lot of sloppiness as far as I'm concerned, Alan. And we'll be breaking this down here, but to quote something you like to say, I think that was more us playing bad,
yes,
than WVU playing good.
Absolutely. Overall thoughts, though, of that game, the pick was the moment. You called it. Who will be Tommy Duhart? Who will be that player that steps up, comes out of nowhere? MJ Devonshire gets that interception, but it was not the first drop for the Mountaineers that day. So it was it was bound to happen, and in a clutch moment like that, pretty beautiful to see. One of my favorite brawl moments of all time.
Yeah. I mean, that was just something. Pitt had the momentum, tie in that game late in the fourth quarter after a long touchdown drive, capped off by that Abanikanda touchdown, and then it just felt like Pitt was gonna make a play there. They were going to stop them one way or another. I didn't see it being an interception return for a touchdown, but yeah, they were able to make the huge play, capitalizing off a mistake that West Virginia made on a drop pass. But I will say West Virginia made very few mistakes in the game, and to see Pitt really capitalize on that one was just something to see, and the place just going absolutely bananas.
Yeah, they did not they made the timely mistakes, the ones that really hurt. That's what they did. They should have just kept running the ball at the end of the game there. Why not? Just run it, make the cutback with a tight end running back. You're going to get 50 yards per run. What was he averaging? That was crazy to see how Pitt's D-line and linebackers just could not handle the WVU running game at times, but maybe that was the 75%. Maybe that was the atmosphere, a Creature Stadium, Vince. Maybe the brawl aura got to the linebackers, especially when it came to the WVU run game, because I can't explain it any other way.
It's amazing that the largest crowd ever to witness a sporting event in the history of Pittsburgh, and it was 75% people from another state.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing. But in all seriousness, to me, how many West Virginia fans would you say were there? Maybe 10,000 at most. I don't think it was that large a number.
No, it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't this kind of ordeal where you're like, man, this is annoying how many of them there are. We sat in a section where I don't feel like we were surrounded by any means. There were a couple sprinkled, but they showed up just as any other school's fans would show up for a big football game. It wasn't anything special in terms of the presence of the opposition in that game.
Yeah, I mean, if you looked at the home side of the field, I don't think there were hardly any. Maybe on the away side, certainly in the upper deck, I think there was a fair number, but overall, not that many. And I'll go out and say right now, I think Tennessee's going to have more fans this week than West Virginia had. Those people from Tennessee, they don't come north very often, and I think they're going to be trying to make the most of this opportunity.
Yeah, big opportunity for them to see the north of the country. They're going to be making it a whole weekend, and we're going to welcome them with open arms, because that's the kind of fans we are at the University of Pittsburgh. But, WVU's presence there was enough, I think, to make it a special atmosphere, at least. That felt
that's
like
true.
brawl.
Yeah.
there were enough of them to make it feel exciting. You heard some cheers when they did well, and, of course, it was loud when Pitt did well. So, awesome to see the brawl back, most of all, and more importantly, that Pitt won the first one back in such stunning and exhilarating fashion.
Yeah, I don't know if we should be playing that game the first game of the season.
Yeah, maybe not the first game of the year, but definitely every year.
But I do kind of like it because we won. So maybe we should play it. But I mean, based on the schedule, it will not be the first game of the year. It's just so tough to play in that kind of situation. Maybe the fact that Pitt was the favorite in this game, maybe that had something to do with them playing a little bit tight. I don't know. We're going to break it down here.
Oh, yes. Let's do it. Because the guy who was tightest, I thought, was the Slovis. Keaton Slovis, the quarterback for the Pitt Panthers, making his debut, transferring from USC, and he took a ton of sacks. What did he take? 4 or 5 sacks?
5 sacks in the game.
Took the sacks because he was so tight. I think he was so deathly afraid of throwing that horrible pick.
Which he did not throw.
He did not. And the most impressive of all, you could say they were kind of modest numbers for today's football. Only 300 yards. And, he had the one touchdown pass that was mostly the other guy just catching it and running a lot for it. But great read to get it to Abanikanda. But the fact that he didn't throw the picks and he took those sacks instead, but more importantly, on the drive when Pitt needed to move down the field, needed him to just pick them apart, he did it. It was beautiful to see that drive on the Abanikanda touchdown. Unbelievable.
Yeah, a long drive. What was that? 80 plus yards on that final drive when they needed it most. Alan, talked about only 300 yards, only one touchdown, but there were a couple drops in that game too. Bub Means dropped a huge deep ball that would have been a 50 plus yard gain, if not a touchdown.
Chalk that up to it being the brawl.
I'm just saying. I think he Slovis. I mean, I thought he played fairly well. We talked about the sacks that he took. A coach addressed that in the press conference this week, Alan, and he said that some of those sacks were on the receivers just not getting open properly. So I don't know what to make of that.
I watched the tape. I'm going to say maybe on 2 of them at most. But I saw some open receivers.
I think you might be right there. One thing I will say that I thought was interesting, Alan, was Carter Johnson, the backup tight end, in the hospital for an illness at middle of the week. So instead of having Gavin Bartholomew out there the entire time, or another backup tight end, they used offensive linemen as extra tight ends, or a fullback, an H-back type situation. Those guys aren't going out for passes. It seemed like there were less guys in the roots a lot of the time. So I don't know if more or less guys for West Virginia to cover. Maybe some of those were just coverage sacks. Either way, Slovis has got to get rid of the ball. Throw it away or something. Can't take some of those bad sacks. But he did seem to do better as the game went on. Some notes that Chris Peak provided on Twitter of PantherLair.com. I like this one. He was 18 in the shotgun formation. 18 of the final 20 offensive snaps, which seemed like where he was doing most of his damage. Yes, he did take a bunch of sacks out of there, but 12 of 15 for 200 yards in that formation. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, Alan, going from under center to the shotgun as far as passing. I'd have not gone back and reviewed all the tape from Southern Cal to see how he was lining up there. I think this had more of an effect on the running game. The formations, which I'm interested to hear your thoughts on, but overall, it seemed like I think he did get more comfortable as the game went on, which maybe is to be expected for a first time starter with a new team.
Yeah, we're seeing the new system, the new formations you allude to there, Vince, and as opposed to what Whipple was doing, I think with maybe some confusion before the snap. This was more of kind of just line them up and try to go bowl them over and asking the offensive line to do a lot. So they were given a big task, and the run game was pretty good. It really saved Pitt and steadied the ship when WVU was making some big plays. But overall, controlling it on the ground, Pitt they left a little bit to be desired. And I think that's where maybe the offensive line getting more comfortable with what they're being asked to do, and maybe having all their personnel out there and available, or, you know, at least more than one tight end will be a good thing.
And I don't know if it was running backs maybe not hitting the holes that they were supposed to. Certainly Rodney Hammond had a huge game, several big plays, but Israel Abonaconda maybe not the performance that we were expecting from him. Yeah, he did have the big touchdown catch, but the rest of the game did not have those huge runs. And I wonder if it was just maybe not seeing the holes, you know, running out of an under center I formation as opposed to a sidecar in a shotgun situation. So I think there's some adjustments that need to be done there. We'll be talking about the game this coming week. Pitt, towards the end of the game last year against Tennessee, was very successful running the ball and running out the clock. They're going to need to be effective again if they're going to hope to pull out a victory.
Yeah, the Cignetti offense came out there and was effective, and it made some big plays in moments. But I don't know. I'm still on the fence about whether or not it's an upgrade or what from last year in terms of scheme. What do you think it's going to look like? There'll be a lot of under center this week.
I don't know. I think we're certainly going to need to see more tape for sure.
I wonder what the thinking was there. And I love running from under center, but it was and throwing from under center too. But if you're it was just very predictable when they would go play action, which is what they were trying to do. You could tell early in the game. So
I just look at it. If you have a talent like an Abonaconda, you're trying to get this guy out on the edge as quickly as possible, and that did not seem to be his running style.
They're asking him to go inside too much.
Gabe Hoy did not play in this game. On that right side, Matt Gonsalves, he kind of struggled a little bit. So yeah, I mean, you had some new guys in there, rotating, offensive linemen. Maybe there's, as a tight end, maybe there's more stacking towards that side or something. West Virginia's got a pretty good defensive line. No doubt about that. Yeah. So, I mean, this was going to be a tough challenge, tough sledding running against these guys. And, while Pitt did not do great, I don't think they did horrible, but they're going to have to improve.
Yeah, I think just for the offense, they did it, but let's hope that Cignetti's not trying to put a square peg in a round hole and really trying to go under center all the time, because that's what they want to do when they're just no good at it. But we're not going to make the judgment on it just yet. It is the first game, and they did have a quality opponent on that part of the field. So just one thing to keep an eye on from that game. Overall, though, offensively, total passing grade for me for game one in that atmosphere. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. They could have been a lot sloppier. It could have been. WVU was sloppy on offense on their side. They had false starts. Maybe it's because they only had 75% of the stadium full with their fans. I don't know. They had drops, but they did go out there and they ran all over the Pitt Panthers. My goodness. How the hell did that happen? Watching it back, it just looked like overrunning the play and just leaving wide open cutback lanes there for everybody.
Give credit to C.J. Donaldson, running back from West Virginia. He, when those lanes were there, he found them and he exploded through them. So give credit to that guy. One tough hombre.
Real quick on him, Vince, the tight end, C.J. Donaldson, who's West Virginia's best running back. My cousin Zach, who's a freshman at WVU, took the loss graciously, wanted me to tell everyone, he's in my business class, which he said about 600 times this weekend.
What kind of business?
It's not the business of winning, I'll tell you that.
We'll have to investigate that a little bit further. I like what you said there. Overrunning plays. Bangley Kamara, Shane Simon. Guys that played more in this game in one single game than they have, any other game of their whole careers. There wasn't a whole lot of rotation on those linebackers, and it seemed like those were guys that just did not, just like you said, overran the play sometimes. And maybe it wasn't defensive linemen like sealing the edge when they had to or what, but it seemed like there were too many missed tackles and too many overran plays for me. And I'm hoping that was just shaking the rust off, so to speak, for a first game.
I mean, I just don't see how that continues, knowing who Pat Narduzzi is and his focus on the defense. So not too worried, but it was alarming. And I really have no explanation for it other than maybe it was a bad day, or like you said, just new to playing that much for Kamara and Simon especially. Although Simon, I thought both of them had some, bright spots. Simon had some a couple big plays. They did have an injury on defense to Deslin Alexander. How'd that affect the run game? I'm not so sure that much. John Morgan was out there playing pretty well. He made all the big plays.
Yeah.
And the pressure was there too from the D-line, I think, when they needed it. What are you going to do when you get to the quarterback and dying quails are in the air and they get caught by the opponent still?
Yeah, that was a little alarming that Pitt didn't pick off a couple of those that probably should have, and even more upsetting that West Virginia was more aggressive and caught those balls floating up in the air.
What happens though when you've got a bunch of? I mean, does Pitt have a DB over 6'1"?
Yeah,
or
yes,
6 foot. Do they have someone who could compete with a 6'3" guy for a 50-50 ball?
Well, you got to give some credit that Bryce Ford Wheaton. We talked about him on
credit
the show
to him
last
for dropping
week.
that pass, but also making that big catch. Yes,
yeah. He made some big catches. He was a tough guy to deal with, no question about it. And Pitt's going to be facing that this week against Tennessee. Some big receivers. It's going to be a challenge again. JT Daniels, he was getting rid of the ball very quickly. So it's not like yes, WVU did take some shots downfield, but not that many super deep shots from what I could tell, Alan. I haven't combed over the stats like you have, but that's the way it seemed like to me. And Pitt, maybe not as much pressure as some would like, but I think he was getting rid of the ball very quickly.
Yeah, he was, and he took a couple, but yeah, the shots that they took were when they were kind of near the red zone and looking to get into, just faded into the end zone. They were attacking AJ Woods down the field a lot, but they weren't deep balls, and eventually Pat makes the best call of the game, I think, and kind of replaced Woods near the end of the game, and
he actually
stopped getting abused.
Yeah, he actually came out early in the second quarter, Alan.
Yeah.
And, Rashad Battle was in there, obviously, MJ Devonshire.
Much taller, and I guess more aware cornerback.
Maybe more awareness. Hard to say. And Marquez Williams, I thought he did a pretty good job playing most of the game. The cornerback on the other side, he caused that huge fumble in the game. So, we knew they were going to be tested. They're going to be tested again this week, for sure. I think it's going to be a little bit different of a challenge this week. But the secondary, I don't think it was horrible. There's definitely some room for improvement for sure.
No, I mean that secondary played exactly how a Pat Narduzzi secondary plays, and actually. I'm happy with their game because what were they called for an interference wise? Like one PI, maybe. One rough one was the touchdown where he's playing press again and just leaving a guy out on an island unnecessarily against the guy who's at least 5 inches taller than him. Hoping to get the pressure, I guess, but still when you're that close to the end zone and they could get the ball away quickly, they proved that. I don't know. Maybe they were loading up at guys at the line of scrimmage to stop the run because they couldn't do it. But that was kind of questionable in terms of defensive play calling and personnel choices too.
Yeah, and just overall, I mean, there were some unfortunate things that happened. I mean, Pitt had WVU a couple times third and long in their own end, and they end up converting. There was that one taunting penalty by Haba that gave him a first down,
which was taunting,
and they eventually scored on that drive. That we talked about the one where it was just a tipped ball up in the air, and the West Virginia guy was the only one that went for it. They end up getting points on that drive. So there were a couple fine line moments that if they would have went the other way, maybe this game isn't as close.
Yeah, my favorite call of the game was the illegal blocking on the cornerback.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Did you watch that back? It was ridiculous.
I did, and I'm still not quite sure what. I don't know.
Guy falls, a guy trips over him, and they're calling it an illegal block. It made no sense. Some questionable refereeing in that game, but I'm not going to complain about it. It didn't. In the end, WVU made up for it by dropping a pass and also targeting players at the worst possible time with legit targeting. So the refereeing was a part of the game, but overcome, I think, by Pitt a little bit. Special teams wise, Pitt has a punt blocked with their goofy looking Australian style punting system, which I'm not a fan of. Especially a guy in his first football game ever was the Backyard Brawl. He's got to be the only human who could say that.
Yeah, probably. Just a rough outing there. And I think he learned pretty quick, like only take 3 steps and then get that thing out of there.
Sam Vanderhart kicked the ball quickly. That's what he learned in that game. Ben Sauls, though, he kicked the ball efficiently.
Yep. Made all of his kicks, extra points, a field goal. Can't complain too much about him. And there weren't really any real shaky ones from what I recall, Alan, unlike last year where it was just, you never knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, it wasn't that kind of adventure in this first game. So all around, top to bottom, first week, as usual, things to fix, things that looked pretty promising, and things that Pitt needs to really quickly fix for Tennessee, Vince, because this is a team coming into town that is not like WVU. They're not full of a bunch of guys that are going to be dropping passes, jumping, false starts. This is a team that's really coming into its own as they try to gain respectability in the SEC, a team that definitely could have beat Pitt last year if it weren't for one Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, a tough ball game down in Knoxville last year. This year, the Tennessee Volunteers coming in to Heinz Field 1-0 after beating Ball State in their first outing that last Thursday night, 59-10. That's how bad they beat them, Alan. 59-10.
That's a molly
Ball State. Hendon Hooker, 4 total touchdowns on the game, 2 rushing, 2 passing, getting it done on the ground a lot. 3 running backs had over 10 carries, so getting a lot of guys involved. We know about their big receivers that they have, led by Cedric Tillman. This is going to be a battle for sure, Alan. But history may be on the Panther side a little bit. The past 2 meetings against Coach Heupel, Narduzzi's defeated him 2-1 against him. Hendon Hooker, they've played him the last 2 years against Tennessee when he came in for a lot of the game, and against Virginia Tech the previous year. And Pitt beat them both those times. Hooker. So, a lot of people are talking him up. A lot of people are saying he's going to be a huge difference maker, not just in this game, but in SEC play, Alan. But the Panthers have found a way to handle him. This is a quarterback that they know how to beat.
Oh, for sure. There's a lot of good players on Tennessee's team, but Pitt's beaten them. and some of them they've beaten when they were at other schools too. But this is a team that I think is much better than what Pitt saw last year in terms of, when you're talking about experience and being a collective unit. Remember last year, they're coming into that game, Tennessee had a lot of transfers. coming
Yeah.
into the last season. So now
Also,
they've
it was
been there.
only their second game in that
Yeah.
Josh Heupel system last year. They got a whole year under their belt. A lot was made about Hooker. Came in midway through the game because Joe Milton ended up getting hurt, and Milton missed a bunch of open balls. But Hooker missed some too, and he also threw an interception at the end of the game that iced it. So, yes, he did play good, but not good enough.
No. Last year, it was funny to watch Joe Milton try to throw the ball against Pitt. Hooker came in. He wasn't that much more impressive, although a lot more efficient, and made it a game. But Pitt in the end last year, the defense stepped up, made the big plays, timely big plays like they did all year. There was a trick play also. Jared Wayne threw a touchdown last year in this game. So Pitt coming into it, very much the same philosophy, a little bit different personnel, but I think the same game plan, right? Going up against them, you want to force Hooker to be throwing the ball, not running it on you. I think these are, tougher receivers than last week against WVU, but guys, I think Pitt's secondary can handle. They can go up, press them, and hopefully give some time for some pressure this week.
Well, I'll say this, there are going to be receivers running wide open in this game at some point. It's just a matter of if Hooker is going to hit them or not.
Yeah.
If you look at the stats from the game last year, and I don't have them in front of me at the moment, but there were some big QB runs, some big scrambles by Hooker and Milton in that game. Probably most of Tennessee's rushing yards came from the quarterback position.
Yes, sir. For 103 yards combined last year.
When you get this team in third and long, you can't give up those kind of big runs. You can't give up those easy runs, Alan. You got to make them earn it on a big pass. And I do think that there are going to be times in this game where there's going to be some receivers left in one-on-one coverage down the field, and he's going to be throwing it up, and you're going to have to hope and pray for an incomplete ball with no penalty.
Yeah, that's going to be definitely happening in this game. But one thing also that I need to note is last year Pitt, their defensive philosophy, same as this year, but they also had another aspect of it, and that was change them up, line change. It was like a hockey team with how many players were coming in and out, playing linebacker and in the secondary and on the defensive line. And they still have a little bit of that going on. But at linebacker, especially last week, Vince, you brought it up, Kamara, Dennis, and Simon were in there most of the time. So I'm going to be interested to see the gas tank for the Pitt defense against this team, because they couldn't be worn out by Tennessee, no matter how much Tennessee tried to run around and get those kind of loosey-goosey plays with the quarterbacks moving around and taking deep shots. When you play that way, you could wear a defense down, but Pitt was ready for that personnel-wise. Are they prepared this year for that? Are they deep enough, or are they going to be able to just stick with a lot of the starters in there for the entire game?
Well, I think they're going to have to make some personnel changes throughout the game. A coach kind of alluded to that. He's talked about the tempo that we expect to see. Guys like Brandon George, who's been banged up, didn't play last week. Guys like Taylor Wiltz, linebacker from Breaux Bridge, he barely got in the game, and coach called him out saying that he probably needed to be in the game more. So yes. I Solomon DeShields did not play a ton. I expect those guys are going to be in there more, for better or for worse, this week. That defensive line, though, I think the rotation there is going to be critical, because last year Pitt was able to get a tremendous amount of pressure on the quarterback, on whether it was Milton or Hooker. And, they like to have those real, deep routes, and those need a little bit of time to develop. So I expect the Pitt defensive line is going to have opportunity to get to the quarterback, and rotating those guys is going to be critical.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I would declare is the biggest matchup of the game, is Pitt's D-line showing up and making life hell for Hendon Hooker, because that is a quarterback, I think, if he's comfortable throughout the day, can beat you for sure. A lot of people call him an underrated quarterback in the country, but he has a lot of experience. I think he's dangerous. So hopefully the D-line shows up. Hopefully Pitt fans show up, make it a great atmosphere like it was last year in Tennessee. Amazing to see Pitt playing an SEC atmosphere. So I'm hoping that we reciprocate that, show them some SEC hospitality when they come to a Creature Stadium, Vince. And then Slovis versus this defense with his running backs. Who will he have available? What's the latest, and what do you expect? Because I am hoping for an efficient game the same way, but just a little less taking the sack, a little more getting rid of the ball, either throw it away or tuck and run if you can. I'm just hoping not to be losing so many yards on that scramble. And I think Slovis is very trustworthy with the ball in his hands when it comes to turnovers, so far at least.
Yeah, I think so, and he's going to have to make some plays. I think they're going to have to, regardless. I'm not saying it needs to be some quick strike offense, but they are going to need to score points in this game in order to win. It's
a Josh Heupel team. You need to score in the 30s to beat one of his teams.
And the past 2 times Pitt has beaten him, they've had to score a whole hell of a lot of points. It would be really nice to have Rodney Hammond this week. It does not sound good from what we've heard. So that means, Israel Bonaconda, he's gonna have to be the man. We talked about the improvements we'd like to see in the running game there. I don't know if it's going to be, Vincent Davis backing him up, maybe Sibo Feinmeister backing him up. We'll have to see what the running back rotation looks like. But I do want to see a lot more passing this game, and I think Pitt can take advantage of Tennessee here. Tennessee, their defense not great, average, I would say. I think we had a much tougher challenge against West Virginia last week. Tennessee, in their game against Ball State, not a ton of pressure on the quarterback, Allen. Ball State threw the ball 43 times. Tennessee did not sack him at all, their quarterback. And not to say they didn't get any pressures, but I think I only counted 2 tackles for loss in the entire game. So this is not a an LSU or an Alabama or Georgia defensive line that they're going to be facing. So I would say, especially without him, and maybe you're throwing the ball a little bit more. You got to get that Bartholomew guy involved a little bit more, and the receivers got to make the big catches when counted upon.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Slovis is going to rely a little bit more on that Bartholomew, man. I cannot believe that was maybe the biggest shocker of that game, besides obviously the run D, that he was, I think, thrown to one time, and it was a great catch. Did he even target him more than once?
He did not play as many snaps. Coach said he didn't want to wear him out, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. But I think he's going to be needed heavily this week. He is too much of a weapon to have on the sidelines.
For sure, especially against a team like this that is probably going to rely on their coverage a lot. So they're going to be focusing on stopping Mumfield, They know Wayne's dangerous at Tennessee. So maybe getting Bartholomew involved, throwing down the seam a little bit, taking advantage of matchups is what Slovis is all about, and I think what he'll be able to do, especially if he has time, but even against a not great D-line or pass rush, holding the ball too damn long can hurt you. I want to see Slovis maybe follow his first instinct a little bit more. He was very cautious with the football. It paid off, but I think barely against WVU, and a little bit too late. You want to be comfortable, and especially you want to be scoring at a consistent clip. You can't start and then stop, have a 3-and-out, then have an 80-yard drive all game long, especially against a team coached by Josh Heupel. So I hope he's coming out like Kenny did last year, ready to really, really gunsling in this game, because this has shootout written all over it.
Yeah. If you remember last year, Pitt gave up a punt block for a touchdown at the beginning of that game. There was another shaky turnover on downs towards the beginning. Pitt was in a 10-0 hole real quick. You cannot spot this team 10 points. You can't continue to try to come from behind like this. Although I'm think Slovis can compete in a shootout, but we cannot put ourselves in that position.
I think he can too. I could picture it. I could picture how it goes. He's got the receivers to get open all game long. He's got the accuracy. Maybe the X factor is Abanikanda making the one or two big splash plays that gut the Volunteers. Can they get him on the edge? Can they get him in open space to make that big play? Or someone, with an equivalent speed, which really there isn't, or someone with the playmaking ability. So I think if Mumpfield maybe gets in space, he could do it. But I think the better and more likely player to do it would be Abanikanda. Does he show up? I like that. I heard he told Narduzzi, I wasn't good today, basically, against WVU. I need to be better. So a lot on his shoulder and a lot to prove for Izzy in this game too. And I'm looking for a big game from him because they're going to need him to beat the Vols, especially without Hot Rod.
Yep.
Man, I can't wait. The Vols coming to town. Pitt 1-0, looking to remain undefeated and live up to all those standards that Desmond Howard has set for them as a contender for the national title, or at least for a playoff appearance from the ACC. Man, they're still talking about Pitt winning that Backyard Brawl, Vince. They're still talking about Pitt as a national contender. But most of it on the internet is really focused on, some of the more ridiculous things. And that's what we love about a big game like that. People say the most absurd things after a Backyard Brawl, especially on the Pitternet.
Can you explain what internet is?
I hear there's rumors on the internets.
And to all those faceless keyboard warriors on Twitter.
But we're a good darn football team. I'm proud of these guys.
Pittsburgh Bobby on Panther Lair. Good for HCPN. He sticks up for every part of the Pitt program. He is a Pitt man through and through. You can't ask your players to go out and fight for you and not fight in support of them. He is transforming from a player's coach to the university's coach.
Yeah, I agree with Pittsburgh Bobby here. Pitt fans certainly get a whole lot of flack for not supporting their team, and they turned up for that game, and to hear all that stuff before it started about 75% and all that nonsense that was just not flat out not true was ridiculous, and good on Pitt. Good on Pat Narduzzi for telling it like it is.
Yeah, and also for our Pitt fans that aren't lurking on the Pitternet or posting on the Pitternet, HCPN, that'd be head coach Pat Narduzzi. So I agree with Pittsburgh Bobby too. I loved it. I don't see where you could criticize Pat Narduzzi for criticizing the BS reports. That's like really upsetting to fans. I mean, that's all we were talking about at the tailgate. Like that kind of ruined the tailgate almost, because then it had forced me to be like, all right, now I got to look around to count how many WVU fans are really here. I want to see if this is true. It's just rumors, false information. Got to be responsible with it. Whoever reported that, ESPN or whatever. Pat Narduzzi saying it on a platform like that. Loved it. Transforming from a player's coach to the university's coach. If you want to call it that, he's becoming now the face of the franchise, if you will. Pat Narduzzi becoming synonymous with Pitt football, and I dig it the most because he's a fun guy to watch, to cover, to root for, and he's doing well right now. So hopefully it continues, and Alabama doesn't steal him, of course.
Yeah. I mean, with all the topsy-turviness of, coaches switching teams, and Pitt had its share, this is a guy that's proved to be fairly stable, and he's willing to stick up for his team.
Pat. WM Koval on VolsNation.com says, Vols have never beaten Pitt. Good gosh, enough is enough. We're not talking Texas or Ohio State. It's Pitt, for heaven's sake. What the hell is Texas doing in there in this take? Say a team that's good. Say Alabama, Georgia. Hell, you could even say Michigan over Texas in this take. WM Koval. Texas? Pitt's better than Texas. Pitt's better than Ohio State right now. We won by more points, didn't we? Or did they almost cover? No, they won.
I think it was about the same. But I mean, yeah. First of all, Pitt and Tennessee have only played a few times, so there's not a large sample size here.
Gosh.
I don't know how many times they've played Texas or Ohio State. I'm guessing probably the last times these teams played were probably in the 80s, and last year when Pitt was very good.
This is why the Vols are the Vols that are the Vols right now, and they're not the Vols of the 90s or the early 2000s, because you're focused on beating Pitt and saying, good gosh, we can't beat Pitt, when you should be saying, good gosh, we can't beat Georgia or Florida or Alabama. Come on, get your head straight, Vols fans. We want you to do well. I mean, we want to beat you, but you need to get your act together if you even want to get on Pitt's level here. Heaven's sake.
Yeah.
Voltaism on volsnation.com. I just watched the Pitt replay, and I didn't see a top 25 team. Their rating is based on last year's success. UT by 10 to 14 points. I could see if you have a huge disrespect for the Big 12 and WVU, what a lot of people do. A lot of people have that. And then you watch the game and see Pitt play them that closely. Maybe you think, oh, they're not a top 25 team. But again, this take is stupid. It makes no sense. That is the backyard brawl. Teams, even when they're facing a rival opponent that is on a down year, you're going to have close games against them sometimes. Ask WVU back when they lost 13-9. The backyard brawl is different. The rankings don't matter. So good luck if you're paying attention to that from that game tape. But it won't matter come this Saturday, I think.
Yeah. I mean, this is, it was the first game, and I maybe if you'd been, living in Siberia with no access to newspapers or magazines, you may say something like that. But Pitt, a lot of the players on this team were the ones that beat them last year. Yes, we did not play great in that first game, but still won. And as much criticism as we provided for this offense, the offense still scored 31. The defense still made big plays when they had to. So by far from a horrible performance. It was no 59 nothing over Ball State. So I just don't see how you could criticize it. I mean, maybe if you only saw part of this game and you didn't see him at all last year,
or you're looking at it from that side of it, because I could easily combat you with this argument. Wow, Pitt sure looked like a top 25 team. They played like dog shit and still beat WVU. I mean, they made all these mistakes. Their quarterback took 5 sacks. They had injuries to key players. They only had one tight end they conserved playing their actual tight end. Can you believe they went out there and WVU torched them all on the ground and just decimated them every time they handed the ball off, and Pitt still won? How'd they do it? They're a top 25 team. Obviously, they're good players, good team, good coach.
It seems like they're just trying to speak it into existence, I guess. I don't know.
Whatever helps you sleep at night, Voltaism. Whatever helps you get to Saturday, because that's when the reality will bite you, and it'll show. Pitt is a top 25 team, and according to some national people, even a top 4 team at the end of the year. And that's what they're saying on the Pitternet. A lot more craziness, but we had to whittle it down there, Vince. I know you had a lot more, but I want to get back to reality. The reactions to the backyard brawl around the stadium, walking out of that place afterwards with you. I mean, hearing what people were saying, it was, for heaven's sake, that was like being in heaven. Hearing
a wild scene.
Absolutely. A great time, an all-time great time. Remember it for the rest of my life. People talking about it, but you know what? People still think that game could have been better for Pitt, if not for a few minor changes to the roster. I think we'll figure out what that exactly is by finding out what they're talking about around town.
Another Saturday coming, and the Panthers are playing. Time to find out what the Panthers are saying.
Dude, if we had Kenny, we win that game by 3 touchdowns.
Oh, if we had Palco, we win by 4.
Hail to Pitt.
What the Yinzers are saying.
So that's what the Yinzers are saying. Still some room for improvement, obviously, is what people are feeling about that backyard brawl. But that's in the rearview mirror now, Alan. We'll see those Cats again next year. It's all focused on the Volunteers. But before we get to that final prediction, I want to talk to you about some other big games and some major changes to this playoff situation that Desmond Howard has predicted.
Oh, college football. Don't you dare be acting like the regular season will matter forever. It was bound to change, and then the change is coming. And it's might be coming sooner than you think. I mean, that's got to get whittled out, but the expanded playoff, Vince, my goodness. Pitt's definitely going to be a perennial favorite to get to the playoff now. 12 teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild. I don't know when these games are going to be played. I guess I'm kind of interested in that. But it's just remarkable. Pitt would have been in this playoff, Alan, last year. I'm not saying they would have won it. I'm just saying they would have been in it. And I think they would have had a very good shot at beating the majority of teams that would have been in it. Because Kenny Pickett would have been playing in those games, Alan.
Oh, of course, yeah. This was why they had to do it, because of guys like Kenny Pickett and other great college players who are just not playing in these bowl games in December and January, and you
might be right about that.
Yeah, absolutely need to do this for the revenue streams for the NCAA and the TV partners.
But overall, I do not like this at all. There is way too many teams involved. 12 is just way too many. Like, for example, that Michigan-Ohio State game last year, as great as it would have been essentially a meaningless game. I mean, I understand the rivalry aspect, the fan bases, for those teams want to win. But from an observer, from the outside, I'm looking at that game being like, well, it doesn't really matter who wins. Maybe it matters for who's going to get a bye in the playoff, I guess. But both teams are going to be in it. They're going to play each other again down the road for what the real game. So overall, I think this is bad for the sport.
It's a catch-22. I wouldn't say it's all bad. There is some good. Like, here's the brighter side. Because now 12 teams will be getting in the college football playoff. When I just feel like there's more incentive to pay, to spend, and there's more money coming in. So that means when Alabama comes calling Pat Narduzzi, we might be able to keep him, Vince, because Pitt's going to be seeing that, we could be a playoff team all the time. So I think we got a good shot at keeping Pat. And, of course, Pitt's got a good shot at being on the national stage a lot more with the expanded playoff. So you see that. And also, while the regular season will be diminished, it makes for, if you get in the playoff, big moments we've never seen and maybe can't even fathom for college football, tournament style being played. It's going to be really intense, and I look forward to that. But yeah, this is a money grab. This is a reaction to kind of where the winds are blowing in college football. And honestly, it might have been necessary, because no one gives a damn about a bowl game if it's not in the college football playoff, really.
Yeah.
Unless you're a fan of that university, die hard.
It will provide more games of meaning in the postseason, but maybe not the regular season.
Exactly. And that's what they care about, because that's where the money is. Everybody's watching the regular season anyway. And, the Backyard Brawl will still be fun. And we definitely know that it'll only matter that week, because there's no chance of the two teams playing each other in the playoff, because WVU won't be getting there. So let's move on to this week's college football. Alabama against that team that, man, it's not like Pitt's Texas, but Texas is playing Alabama, and they're at home, dogs by 20 in Austin.
Yeah, that's we're going to find out how good this Quinn Ewers and Texas team really is, and I do not think that they are ready for this this Saturday, a big noon kickoff, Alan. I think Alabama's gonna crush this team. I think they're gonna, it seems like this is something Nick Saban would be angry about, and he's gonna come out there and win this game big, I think.
Oh yeah, I'm not rocking with the Pro Football Focus this year, Vince. So I'm not going to have those advanced analytical looks at the lines going into games. But I don't need it to know that Alabama's covering this game. The Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers, you mentioned him, looks like he pumped gas at a Buc-ee's, or he was just like a 1970s gas station attendant. That's what he looks like to me.
He may have.
It's a great haircut.
Yeah, and he may be good in time, but I don't think he's ready for what's going to be happening this Saturday.
He's got the baby face look, a guy you want to root for, a guy that could be a big star if he makes it big in this game. Don't see it happening, though. Hell no. Not against this Alabama.
I mean, look at the pressure that's got to be on him here. I mean, you got Arch Manning breathing down your neck. You better come out ready to play. This is and Texas has some good skill position players. There's no doubt about that. But are they blocking, Will Anderson and all those guys? I don't think so.
Yeah, Bijan Robinson's gonna need a lot of help to stand out in this game. Definitely Alabama to cover the 20. We got Kentucky, number 20 in the nation, our 5.5-point dogs at number 12 Florida, who beat your Pac-12 champion Utah Utes.
Yeah, they did. A tremendous game from Anthony Richardson, an unranked Florida team, now ranked 12th in the nation by the Associated Press. I am not on this Kentucky team at all this year. I think they struggled a little bit with Miami of Ohio last week. The score didn't really indicate it, but I do not think they're that good. Now, is Florida going to have a lot left after that performance last week? We'll see. But I do think they're going to get by the Wildcats, and I think at home they could beat them by more than the number.
Oh yeah, by a touchdown at least. I got the Gators by a touchdown. Not that I want to see it, but there's something about Billy Napier. He knows how to tap into talent, but also the crowd. I think Florida is going to be a tough place to play now moving forward with him in that role. A really big win for them against Utah last week. But did we pick that game last week?
We did.
And I picked Florida?
I think we both picked Florida.
Yeah? Okay. But you still have Utah winning the Pac-12. You think that damages the middle?
They could still win the Pac-12.
They can, but I think they were kind of exposed in that game to me.
I don't. That was a different kind of. They're not used to hanging out in swamps.
I know, but when they go to Hollywood, are they going to be able to hang out with the Hollywood 69ers or however many they scored, 66? SC looked real last week, even though they're playing a scrub in Rice. I think I might like SC now for the Pac-12. That's another question, though. Got to move on to Baylor, the team that's ending the Big 12, number 9 in the country. 3-point dogs at number 21 BYU.
Yeah, maybe there's something I don't know about this, but I think they're going to be ending BYU this year. BYU going to the Big 12, Allen. They're going to get a taste of what they're up against here. I think Baylor is a really good team, strong in the trenches on both sides, and better than BYU. And that's why I think they're going to come out of this game with a victory. I'm a little surprised that Baylor is an underdog of 3 here. But I am going to go with the Bears in this game.
Yeah, nice late game here.
Yeah,
Baylor and BYU.
10:30, is that what time it kicks off?
Yeah, kicking off real late. But I think this is a test here for BYU. Are you up to the challenge of the grueling Big 12 schedule where you're playing teams that are basically your equivalent every week? Pretty even matchup, I think. Especially with BYU getting to be the home team But I like Baylor to win, obviously. I picked them to win the Big 12. I think they could play a team that's coming into the Big 12 in the future and handle them as well. I'm going to say they win by, I'm going to say 6, which is a cover the other way around. So they're dogs by 3. I think they're going to flip it all the way around. They're going to handle this game fairly easy in that regard. But I mean, BYU's coming in there. They don't have the beef. They don't have the beef for Dave Aranda's team. They don't have it. Sorry. But let's bring it to the most important game of the week. Number 24, Tennessee Volunteers. 6.5 point favorites at number 17. Pitt at a Creature Stadium. Creatures lurking in the rivers as Tennessee arrives as favorites to the place formerly known as Heinz Field, Vince.
Yeah. This line, I saw it at 3.5 or 4, actually. But in some of those early preseason lines, Alan, opened up at 4.5 at the Circa, and it's been bet up to 6.5 here. I saw it as much as 7 at some places, and it seems to have gone back down to 6.5 here, and I'm seeing a total of 66 points, Alan. 66 points, 66.5 at Caesars, 66.5 at the Rivers. And at the Golden Nugget, it looks like there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. I think on both sides for sure. I think both teams are scoring over 30 in this game, and it is going to be a nail biter. I think it's going to come down to the very end. Pitt is going to be giving up some big plays in this game. That's just the nature of this Josh Heupel offense. That's just the cost of doing business, I would say, is what's going to happen. There's going to be some bad penalties on third down. It's just something we're going to have to live with. But I think in the end, the defense is going to make enough plays, and I think Slovis is going to really improve. I think this line here, the 6.5 points, to me is a reaction of how good Tennessee looked in their opening game and how shaky Pitt looked in their opening game. I mean, as much as we talked about, missed opportunities and stuff, it's possible Pitt could have lost that game. It came down to the fourth quarter. So I think, this is just a reaction of us not playing that great and Tennessee playing good. But I think Pitt is going to be able to correct a lot of the stuff that went wrong and execute better on offense, better assignment football, staying in your lanes on defense, making a big enough plays. And against a quarterback like Hooker, Pitt has shown the ability to beat those kind of guys. And I think they're going to do it again this Saturday, 3:30 ABC, 2 undefeated teams, a Johnny Majors Classic. I cannot wait to see it. And I'll go with a score of 44-42.
Okay. That very much in my ballpark. I like that. I think it's total disrespect, nonsensical to be making Pitt the dogs like this, but even by this much, but even the dogs at all in this game. And I'm not just coming from a homer perspective. Tennessee played Ball State last week. It's not like Tennessee has some world beater transfer or freshman on their team that has made them so drastically different from last year. It is not like they went through the ringer and improved so much since their loss to Pitt that they need to be respected coming into town to be favored this way. I don't see how this is possible other than someone watched that game and saw Keaton Slovis play and thought he was terrible. I don't know how you could watch the game and think it that way. He was very conservative in that game and still threw for 300 yards plus, had a big touchdown in a key moment, and led the team to victory. He was very much a leader on the field. The defense very much made big plays when they needed them. They're still the same Pitt team. People say this ranking is just based on last year. Well, no, duh. They have a lot of the same players from last year. They had the same coach from last year. These two teams played each other last year. So for the line to be this very, very disrespected, Vince, I don't see it. How it could be even explained.
And Coach Narduzzi's playing this up all week.
Good.
They're going to say, hey, listen, you guys didn't play that good. You're getting disrespected here. Last year, every time you had a big win, you followed it up with a loss. Here, you got extra days to prepare. You better get your act together, or you're going to lose. Nobody's giving you a chance. He's playing all of that this week, and that's exactly how he likes it. And I think that's exactly how this team likes it too. They're going to play to the very end in order to win this ball game.
Hey, you could tell me I'm drinking HCPN's Kool-Aid. I might be all about Nards and his Kool-Aid, but he's right. This is disrespect, and they're coming in here, and the price of doing business is a high-scoring game against Josh Heupel's teams and these Tennessee Volunteers for sure. But when you're coming into Pat Narduzzi and Pitt's house a week after the brawl, they're going to take care of town business. They're going to take care of this team because they know how to do it. The blueprint is in Pat's hands to beat this guy and his teams.
Yep.
He knows how to do it.
Exactly.
And he's going to do it again. I got the score, Pitt winning 39-38, a barn burner, a shootout, a nail biter. But you know what? It's far from the Vols covering, and they're not winning. Pitt 2-0, baby. Hail Pitt.
Oh, I hope so. If that happens, we're going to be talking a whole lot next week about the heights that Desmond Howard thinks this team can do.
And it's exciting, but I'm kind of upset it's already almost over. The exciting part of the schedule.
I wouldn't say that, Alan. We still got Rhode Island coming up on the schedule.
New Hampshire.
A revenge game against Western Michigan. But all that does not matter. All that matters right now is this Saturday, 3:30 ABC against the Tennessee Volunteers, a ranked matchup, non-conference at Heinz Field. First time an SEC team coming up to Pittsburgh to play a collegiate football game. It is going to be something to see. You got to be there. It is going to be a hell of a game, a hell of an atmosphere. This is really what it's all about for Pitt's season here, to really put their stamp and say, hey, we are still here. And that last year was not a fluke.
And if you're going to the game, tailgate hard, cheer hard, show some respect to those Volunteer fans making their way all the way up to the north, and have yourself a good time. And if you can, go to the bathroom in a toilet and not behind a dumpster. Saw a lot of that at the brawl, but again, it was the brawl.
I think the Tennessee fans will be a little bit more civilized.
Just make sure you hydrate and you relieve yourselves in a timely fashion. And don't miss any of this game. Pitt and Tennessee, Vince. Let's go. We've broken it down. The stage is set. I'm not going to the game. I know you're very upset about this. I wish I could, but I'm just so honestly, I'm beat up from that brawl. It's been a while since I've been involved in anything like that. That was very intense.
Yeah, so, and this game ain't going to be for the faint of heart either.
No, this will be a lot more exhilarating. This is going to be a high-flying, high-wire act. So, yes, please be ready. If you wear a pacemaker, be very, very cautious watching the game. And everybody really enjoy Pat Narduzzi while he's still here before Alabama scoops him up. Got anything left to say, Vince?
Hail to Pitt, everybody.
All right. You can follow us at H2P Show on Twitter. Hail to Pitt podcast at gmail.com if you want to email us. Thanks to Pretty Easy Podcast for helping produce this week's program. We'll be back next week to recap Pitt, Tennessee. And of course, look forward to the next game. And of course, next up on the slate, no, it is not New Hampshire. It is a rematch against those Western Michigan Broncos on the road in Kalamazoo. You going next week, Vince?
No, I don't have any plans for Kalamazoo.
Okay, good. Well, I have plans to win the game at the very least, but got to get by Tennessee first, everybody. Enjoy it. And like Vince said, hail to Pitt, everybody.